Hello, everybody. Good morning. You gotta let me know if you can hear me today. I had, I'll type it in here. Can you hear me today? I had mic trouble last week. Good morning. Hear me? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. Thank you. All right. Problem seems to have fixed itself. I don't know. I did nothing different. All right. Welcome in, everybody. Hello. Nice to see so many faces here today. Today is a little different for our Sunday coffee chat. We're going to do things backwards today. We are celebrating. Is it a celebration? I think it is a celebration. We're celebrating that we teach a free class, which some of you probably know about or are part of, called Heal Like a Witch. And it's a 5-part audio series. And we put it into our class platform for easier access and so people could find it and be able to come over here and watch the Sunday live streams if they want to. So this is a little bit of a celebration of getting that kicked off. Team TSC worked to set that up behind the scenes. So today we are going to start. I'm going to share 3 different real life examples from my life. So I'm going to model for you what I did, specifically how I use the tools that are in that Heal Like a Witch class, which are also the tools we go into in depth on in Holistic Witchery. So I see lots of you from Holistic Witchery here live today also. I'm going to go I'm sorry. I also have to tell you that we have sickness running rampant through my house. So if I stop a lot to just reclaim my thoughts, that's why. I'm waffling in the kind of have a fever, kind of don't spot. And it's been that way for a few days. So just got to keep my energy focused. But these tools in Heal Like a Witch, they're what we go into in depth on in Holistic Witchery. And so if you're in that class, you've got all of the in depth there. And what I'm going to do is model how I use them in my life, because I think that when you see the tools, you can be inspired by them and you're like, I want to do this. But seeing how somebody actually applies them can be helpful to help you see how you can apply them in a different way in your life, as opposed to just reading like another tarot spread or lighting another candle, right? Like, how do we actually apply them? So I'm going to share 3 examples for you. One from years and years ago, one from a few years ago, and one that's more recent for me. So again, in sharing my personal experience, my hope is to model for you how I've done it, and then you can apply that modeling to your life in a way that makes sense for you. After I share that, I'll pull out my planner and we'll go through our regular sort of Sunday reset planning tips for the week ahead to encourage everybody to consciously create that life that you want to be living. All right. And thank you for the feel betters. COVID has hit our house. It's so interesting. During the heights of COVID, none of us ever got it for years. And now it keeps hitting. So my husband's been really sick and my kids have been really sick also. But lucky for me, I just have a bit of a head cold and I'm just a little bit but I'm the best of everybody. So I'm counting my blessings, knocking on wood, all the wood today that I stay that way because it's been here for days. Okay, so let's talk about this. And Heal Like a Witch, or also, like I said, we go deep on this in Holistic Witchery. You learn about the moon phases. You learn about the chakras, the energy centers, shadow work. You learn about tarot and intuition and ritual. So all of this that you learn about, right? How can we use it in practical ways? So again, that's what I'm going to model for you today. So I do have some notes here so that I can keep myself focused. I see Deirdre sharing had it 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I'm pretty much okay. I'm just like my head's all stuffy. Anyway, we are talking today about how I shifted my energy using these tools. So first, let's talk about the idea of energy. When you learn in science class that energy is in motion, right? Energy is always in motion until something stops it or things are in motion until something stops it, until friction's been applied. So if you think of your own energy in your life, and we can sort of imagine our energy as this field that's both within us and it's floating outside of us, your energy will expand and expand and expand until there's resistance. And when we meet the resistance, this is when our energy starts to constrict, or it stops expanding, or it becomes stagnant. All of those words are the opposite of expansion, alignment, moving forward. When we've been in resistance for a long time, this is where we start to tolerate all of the things that are putting us in resistance, because it can feel too hard to change, or like impossible or overwhelming, or there's no time. So then we procrastinate and we sort of just stay the same. But when we stay the same and we're up against this resistance, again, that constricts our energy from expanding. Now, I want to be really clear and tell you, I'm not the kind of person that's going to say, you just expand your energy and then the law of attraction and you'll manifest everything into being. I think that the reality is we all live in a world where everything feels challenging. Every day there's something challenging that comes our way, whether it's in our actual like day-to-day lives impacting us, or it's information that we're receiving about the world that leaves us feeling helpless. There is so much happening that can make us feel constricted or second guess ourselves. And when we ignore this and we just say, like, let's just expand our energy and love and light our way to manifestation, that really ignores the fact that we are all people with brains, with experiences, who are emotionally sensitive beings. Particularly if you're here, you're probably an emotionally sensitive being, right? Like you feel, you're highly sensitive. You're very empathetic, might even call yourself an empath, and all of this impacts you. And to just say, well, we can just expand our energy and none of that will bother us anymore, I think really does a disservice to the human experience of relating to other people. So you won't ever hear me say, like, we're just going to expand and love and light it away. That's not what you'll get here. But I also think it's true that the resistance invites us to explore what's happening to our energy and how we can expand outward, even still feeling all of these things that make it challenging for us to expand and not be so constricted. The path through moving through the resistance is a rocky one, and it is a challenging one, which is why so many of us just can become complacent in areas of our life and really tolerate things that don't leave us feeling like the best and don't leave us feeling like we're living in complete alignment with what's possible for us. Now, some of the examples I'm going to give you today, they're all about my own life, and they relate to people in my family and how there's resistance there. So I hope by modeling for you how I've shifted my energy helps you to see that it's not a perfect process, and you can apply these tools in ways that can be immediately impactful for you, even if life still feels like life, right? Even if life still feels like life, because that's not my mission here. It isn't to make your life perfect. What is life if it's perfect? Firstly, that there's no experience in that. And secondly, that completely downplays the entire human experience that you're having here, which is so beautiful. And it's really what helps us all to grow and to contribute in meaningful ways to the world around us. All right. I see Marcy asking about Pisces. Marcy, I'm not a Pisces, but I'm a Pisces midheaven. So it makes sense that all of the all of the spiritual, highly sensitive, 1 foot in the clouds, 1 foot in reality people are here at the Sisters Enchanted, because your midheaven's your career indicator. And so it makes a lot of sense that folks who feel that way would be attracted to the Sisters Enchanted, with me having a Pisces midheaven. All right, let's get into these examples. I'm going to run through them. Again, it's modeling for you from my life, so you can see how I did this or how I've used it. And then at the end, we are going to do our few minutes of looking ahead, which we do on Sundays for planning for the week ahead. And of course, planning with intention and energy, not boring old fuddy-duddy planning, although that is part of it. All right. Let's talk about these 3 shifts that I made and the witchy, magical, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, tool that I use to help support me in them. We're going to start with the one that is farthest back in my past, which isn't in the grand scheme of life that far, but was many, many years ago now. I want to take you back in time to when I was dating my ex-boyfriend, I guess. I'm married now. I've been married for, I don't know, too many years. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, are you even in a marriage if you don't say that at some point in time? My my ex-boyfriend of this past version of me, one time I remember it distinctly. We were standing in the entryway of his house, and I have my bachelor's degree in English, and he was an engineer. And I was applying for a job in sales and marketing and for a very, very big company. I got the job, I'm proud to say. But I remember him looking at me and saying distinctly, "Why don't you just get a nice retail job?" Now, I bring up this story for a couple reasons. One, I worked a lot of retail. I actually love retail. I think it's very creative. I think that you work with a lot of people and you've got a great opportunity to help people find exactly what they need in whatever it is that they are experiencing in that day. I had made great friends, no shade on that. The point of bringing up this story was the energy behind his comment. The energy behind the comment was, why don't you just be smaller? Why don't you just take your silly English degree and be smaller? Why don't you just calm that down? Why are you even trying this? That feels way outside your comfort zone, right? At the same time he's telling me this, I also had I still have, he's my grandfather, he's still alive, but he had mentioned to me something about women in business and like not knowing anything. So I have all these internal stories from these men in my life who I very much like, thought like I respected. This is my long-term boyfriend of several years, my grandfather, who, essentially helped, I guess he didn't raise me, but, was more my father than my father was. And these men are like kind of smirking at me through the words that they're saying, right? So I have this energy about me, like, get small. And few years later, I would be married to somebody else, have a baby in my lap, and I would start a business with 50 extra dollars in the bank, literally no extra dollars in the bank. And here I am now, all these years later, 10 years successfully self-employed, where I actually have people on my team and I help support their families and we change people's lives online every single day. So this example, I'm very specifically using it because somewhere in your life, somebody told you something that has changed the way you think about what's possible for you, literally changed what you think you're capable of and what's possible for you. So I'm using this to tell you the energy shift and how I use these tools to change from this person who had these people in my life who happened to be men, telling me to be smaller. Stop being so silly with your English degree. What do you know, Sarah? Calm it down. And then I somehow, right, mustered up the energy to do this and break through that and do what I do now. Now, I have several other examples in my life I could give you that lean on that same energy of be smaller, right? And I want to be clear too. These are people who loved me, who still love me. Like my grandfather still loves me. And it's their mindset that was applying to what they thought was possible for me, not what was actually true about me. So when somebody tells you something, it's important to do that bit of shadow work. So that's one of the tools that we always use. And it's one of the tools that I used in this instance, was to do the shadow work and understand where these stories are coming from, because I had done nothing to tell them I wasn't capable. This was all from their lived experience and what they were applying to me. So when we do shadow work, and it's one of the tools that you learn if you're doing the free heal like a witch, or if you've gone in depth into it in holistic witchery, then you know that these stories, they come from somewhere. And it's important to understand where other people's stories are impacting you and how you've internalized them as your own. So shadow work is one of the things that I did to help shift that energy from their nonsense to what I was able to do. Now, I did have to pay attention to my own shadow stories too, because if I look back through my life, my mother, she was a young mom and, worked several minimum wage jobs when I was young and a baby, and finances were always challenging. My grandmother, her parents owned a tobacco farm in Kentucky, and they didn't even have electricity until she was a teenager. And my grandmother is still alive and well today. So we have a young lineage here. And so the time that was happening, it wasn't common for people to not have electricity at her age. So she grew up poor. They lost the farm. And then my great grandmother never worked after that. So I have this story in my family lineage also of women who don't succeed, or women who struggle, or women who have to really like just barely scrape by. And I had to look at what they were telling me, plus my whole upbringing, and do the shadow work around that to understand, where is this ringing true for me and why is it ringing true for me? So the intention I set around that, using working with the moon and looking at lunar intention, how do I want to feel, is I want to feel capable. I want to feel capable. I want to know that I am capable. And that took a lot of root chakra energy sort of work. So digging into that inner child, digging into what is actually true for me about finances, and what is just something that I've bought into as true because of the world I grew up in, or the people who raised me, right? So doing the shadow work in my root energy center and coming back to that, I want to feel capable, which is that lunar intention, which is what you learn about when you work with the moon. And then ritual was another tool that I really leaned on for that. So doing full moon rituals of writing down how I want to feel and releasing everything that kept me from feeling that way, doing cord cutting meditations, practicing visualizing myself with tools like vision boards, and writing letters from and to my future self, and making it part of ritual that I'd come back to every day with some reminder of what it was that I was working on. So using those tools, shadow work, the root chakra, ritual, I was able to shift the energy from, it's just too much. Like, this isn't what life's got for you, Sarah. You weren't born into that kind of family. You weren't raised from those kind of people, to really doing the thing that I knew I could do all along. I had to get out of my own way, though, to realize I could do it. Now, I will be honest, some of the practical life things, because I never want to mislead you and make you think like, oh, look, it's all energy. It is. I would say it was 90% energy. I also, the man I did marry, very rarely questions me, and he is very not risk averse. He's very risk tolerant. So when it came to me being self-employed and him being employed, it did help that I didn't have somebody else in my life who was like, oh, but what about the money? He and I both are the kind of people that are like, what's the worst that could happen? Can't be that bad. We have family and friends who love us, who would let us sleep in their sofas. Like, we're going to be okay. And so that did help. So that practical life element of knowing that I didn't have somebody saying that's too risky, don't do it. He never said it's not risky, but he just never questions me. So I want to be really honest that I also do have that in my corner and that going for me. But if I didn't do that inner work of the shadow work and working on the root chakra, I don't think I ever would have got there. So I got to give myself that 90% of credit for that. So those are the tools that I used when I had this story of, it's just not for you. Like, that's not the life that you live. And I had people telling me that in their way that felt loving to them. The root chakra, the shadow work, and ritual to help remind me of what I wanted for myself, even when all the noise was coming at me that I should want something different. All right, another sort of midlife experience here. Oh, and I see a great question coming in. Let me answer that. Michelle is saying, what if you have a hard time remembering your childhood situations? Michelle, that's actually really common. And Anna and I, we're sisters. She's my co-founder here. We both have lots of childhood memories that the other doesn't remember. We had a pretty traumatic childhood. And I don't use that word lightly. Like, I know trauma is this word that's thrown around like it's confetti. We had a very challenging, if we want to use that word instead, childhood. So I think that when you start to work with energy, if you are working with your chakras and you don't know exactly the story, but you do know where the stories would lie. So childhood energy lies in your root chakra. Just start working on that energy. You don't need to know the story. And actually, I would contend, I'm going on a tangent now. I would contend that the event, even more so, is the thing that is for therapy, right? The event itself, if you need to process an event, that's therapy, versus if you are ready to just shift the energy, that's personal inner work. That's like life coach work. That's the kind of thing you can do on your own. So you don't have to know the story to be able to shift the energy. And that can be, that's like a concept that I don't think people talk about that often, right? So just looking at the energy center and what do you know lives there, and then how do you speak to it, given how you feel. So if that energy feels constricted, if it feels sad and weighed down, does it matter what made it be that way? How would you talk to somebody who said, I feel constricted, sad, and weighed down? And that's what you do with that energy story. I love that as Renee, my sister, has warped memories. Renee, I think that's just a sister thing. There's some things Anna and I remember completely different. And I'm like, are you sure we were in the same place? And she says the same thing about me. She says the same thing about me. Yeah, memory gaps are for real a thing. All right, let's see. Oh, and Renee's sharing. I'm the only one who worries about, what were you saying? Health insurance and benefits short term. Yeah, I got Renee. Renee's in the mastermind with us. Renee, we can totally talk about about that. But as a person who does not have any of those things, I don't have health insurance, I don't have disability, I don't have any of that stuff. And I've been self-employed for 10 years. I can definitely speak to it. And it's not without, I had a baby who was in the NICU without insurance that would pay for it. So I can certainly speak to that, Renee, in a different context if you ever want to talk about it. All right, let's go on to the next example here. So this example is a little bit closer to this point in time. And this is an energy of feeling like I had to do everything for everybody and like nobody was helping me. And, why do I have to be the strong one? Which I know so many of you women can relate to. So many of you can relate to that. So very specifically, and if you've read one of my books, or you might have heard this, I tell this story, but literally I was crying on my kitchen floor with my toddler who is neurodiverse, has some like sensory differences and things. She was beating me on the head in a fit of rage. I had a baby breastfeeding in my lap and a newborn, and my laptop open next to me, because this was before I have the robust Team Sisters Enchanted team that I have now. And I had to get those bills paid, and I'm just crying on the kitchen floor, these puddles of tears, wondering how I'm so smart and I'm so capable. Where is my help? Like, who is helping me? And the energy shift that had to happen there was in my sacral energy center. It was in my sacral energy. So your sacral energy is where you hold your passion, your desire, your like guilt can live there, all of those kinds of energies. And for women in particular, because it's a watery location, that sort of moon emotional energy can really amplify the emotions that we're feeling there. So I had to ask myself, how I want to feel, right? How do I want to feel? And I wanted to feel spacious in my life, like I could breathe, because I felt very much like I just couldn't breathe. And I wanted to feel like I could breathe. And now I would say, Sharon would love to give that Sarah a hug. Yeah, I'd love to give her a hug too, because I honestly was making my life so much harder than it needed to be. And I see that now, but I did not see that then. So I had to look at my sacral energy. How can I feel spacious? Again, I had to do shadow work. And I had to ask myself, why do I think I have to do all of this? Why aren't I asking for help? Why aren't I delegating? Where was my fear of like not being Wonder Woman and failure and having to say I need help coming from? And not just say I need help, but say specifically what help I needed. One of the things that when I was getting my master's degree, I was in this like social psychology sort of class, and we read about this study where when there's a bunch of group of people who witness somebody in danger or witness something that happened and somebody yells, call 911, nobody will call 911 because they all think somebody else will. And this was like, a study that was done in a bunch of different scenarios. And they found that one of the news articles that led to this was a murder that happened in an apartment building. This was like many moons ago. And so many people, when the police went around, heard it happen, but nobody called because they figured somebody else did. And they didn't know. And like, they didn't want to cause a stir if it was nothing. And they were questioning it. And so the point, what they found in this research was that if you need help, you have to look at somebody in the eyes and say, you right there, you call 911. And I've never forgotten that. And now I reflect on it all these years later, because when you need help and your sacral energy center is like, but I feel guilty asking for help. I feel guilty putting people out. I feel guilty, like not, making somebody else have to go out of their way to help little old me who should be able to do all of this. And why can't I? And that's so silly. We have to not just say, I need help. We need to look at somebody and say, I need help from you doing this specific thing. Because what happens is we'll say, I could really use help with cleaning my house. And then somebody comes to help you and you don't like what they did. They sort of like fluff the pillows and you're like, that's not cleaning. What are you thinking? Specificity and assertiveness, they come from that ability to ask for what you want and then let yourself have it. And that happens in your sacral energy center. So I had to shift from this energy of woe is me, no one's helping me, I must do everything. Obviously, I'm lacking because I can't do everything. And that's why I'm just going to cry, to wanting to feel spacious. That is how I wanted to feel, right? So I have to do that shadow work, understand where that's coming from. And then one of the tools that I used, which might be unexpected, were the two masculine suits in the tarot. So we have got in tarot the pentacles, the cups, the wands, and the swords. And the feminine suits are the pentacles and the cups. The masculine suits with the phallic symbols would be the wands and the swords. And I have a lot of thoughts on masculine and feminine energy, but tapping into those more masculine energies of with the wands, what is my experience right now? When we look at the wand suit, the first half of the wand suit is all like, it's so fun and there's possibility and there's marriage and it's great. The second half though is heavy. It's like, you've been beaten down and you got a load to bear. And so what part of my life experience was taking me from this feels so good and like I can do this to, oh my gosh, how did I end up here? And then with the swords, those are the thoughts that we put upon ourselves that make us feel a certain way. And really using those stories to help me identify what I was thinking to myself and what energies I was exuding into the world around me that were keeping me back, and then how to lean into the more assertive aspects of those energies to really get what I needed so that I could feel spacious in my life. And that helped me so much because now my life is actually more full than it was then. So if you can even believe it, I have more responsibility and my life is more spacious. But it took me doing that work. So the work I did there when I felt overburdened, like no one was helping me, but I felt guilty asking for help and didn't really know how to speak up for what I needed. It was shadow work, working with my sacral energy, and then using tarot to explore the energy of the wands and the swords and how I could see that in my own life. It really helped me in that situation. And again, you have access to these tools to help you with this. And if you're in the free Heal Like a Witch, or if you're in Holistic Witchery, you have the deep dive in them with all kinds of prompts and teacher support. So go to your resources. We love to help you with these sorts of things. All right. Now, my last one, which is the more close to us example. And I will say, I'm not going to go back through the comments right now, but anyone, I saw like lots of just tech trouble. This software, if you do have other things running, it can make this glitchy and feel slow on a live stream. So making sure just everything's closed down, kick people off the internet who are doing less important things. No, I don't know. Just trying to clear up that bandwidth might help. Otherwise, if you did all that, I apologize for the tech gremlins. If only I had that kind of magic power to make it stop, I would. All right. Now, the more close example to me. So some of you who have been around the last few years have heard me speak about some of this, but in 2021, early 2021, I was April 2021. I had been feeling so poor in my body, like so poor. I felt like a walking zombie. I had no energy, and that is not like me. Like I'm a get up and get at it kind of person. And I was just like foggy and dizzy all the time. So I went and got some blood work done, and I was severely anemic. So for all the nurses in the house, I had a 3 ferritin, a 3 iron. My blood cells were like way too small. All sorts of stuff was wreaking havoc on my blood because I'd obviously been anemic for a long time and did not know it. and my hair was falling out. Like I have these photos where my hair was just receded, my whole hairline. And now I see the baby hairs coming in and I'm like, I love you, baby hairs. Keep flourishing. Anyway, it was really, really unfortunate. So because my blood was so awful, I was swept off to gynecologist, gastroenterologist, the oncologist in case I had cancer, like everybody within 10 days. I was in all these specialist offices. Yeah. And Renee, we come back to the health insurance situation. Don't let it hold you down. Anyway, I felt so sick. And I bring this up because one of the things that I know to be true for women is that as women age, your bodies start to do things that can feel a lot like your body's rejecting you. In my specific example, I had like a medical reason why this was happening. I also have endometriosis and adenomyosis. My uterus is enlarged from the adenomyosis. And that can give me a lot of lower body pain for like 1 week every cycle that I have. And so I get it. I get this feeling of like my body is rejecting me. And how do I make life feel good when my body is rejecting me and does not feel good? So I'm using this as an example because I want you to know that, again, as I said in the beginning, I don't feel like we can love and light ourselves out of situations. Life is always going to be there, and we need to acknowledge that. And we can make energetic shifts that help us to expand even when everything feels like that's not possible for us. So now I have a body where it's better. It's a journey. I have to get my blood work done every 3 months because my blood cell sizes never came back up again. I am like constantly anemic, but I also can hold on to too much, which makes my red blood cell count too high. It's a whole journey. So I get my blood taken, every 3 months, but I also exercise more than I ever have. I make sure I get my sleep. I do all these things. So all of that said, when I felt like my body was rejecting me, I now have a relationship with my body that is stronger than it ever was. I have more gratitude for my body than I ever had before. And I just am grateful that I have this vessel that allows me to move through my day, even when I get my blood work back and it's like red flags and I just want to cry and be like, what is the meaning of this? But here's what I did. So I went to my lunar intention and I asked myself, okay, how do I want to feel? And this was, of course, after I went to all the doctors and I was like, all right, I'm going to be okay here. I went to all the doctors and I said, I just want to feel all right. And honestly, that is the way that I move with my body. I don't ever say things like, I want to feel healthy. Like I don't say that because the reality is there's several days every month that I don't feel healthy at all. But I want to feel all right. Like I want to feel like, all right, I feel all right. I got this. And that's part of this. How do you want to feel? And it's part of this energy expansion that makes sense when we look at this law of attraction and just like put out there how you want to feel. But we put these pie in the sky emotions out there that are so far away from where we actually are. I think we can get back into constriction and sabotage so quickly because it feels too far away. So for me, I want to feel all right. That's a very specific choice of words because I logically know that with the things I have going on in my body, I'm not really going to feel like perfect and I'm not going to feel painless a lot of the time. So I want to feel all right. Here I had to work on my heart energy center, and I had to work on that heart energy center because of practicing unconditional love for myself, no matter what. I think that when it comes to body things, we can feel like we are victims to our body or at the mercy of our body. And learning to love yourself unconditionally as you are and know that like your body is the vessel that holds your soul. It's the vessel that allows you to eat delicious food or go on vacation or hug somebody or just be in a moment on your sofa watching your favorite TV show. Like that body does so much for you. So if we can unconditionally love it, I had to really work on that though, like not thinking my body was just going to be better and really realize that this is the body I have. This is what I'm working with. And I love it anyway. And I love it because of all of these things, which all sounds very airy fairy. And it is a little airy fairy, but it's true. So that unconditional love in the heart energy center. Of course, I had to do shadow work here. Shadow work's the main theme in all of these. And I had to deal with the questions that were coming up, like, why me? It's not fair. Everyone else has it easier than I do. I don't understand why this is happening to me. What did I do to make this happen? And I had to ask those myself those questions, but do the shadow work to understand why I was even asking them and where they were coming from, and release those questions that are not helpful. They are not productive, and they are the kinds of questions that get you constricting your energy, not expanding it. So I had to do that shadow work. Now, the thing that really helped me with the tool that I used is using my body and my home and really thinking of it as sacred space. So one of the things that I do every day, even when I'm not getting on camera for TSE, I get dressed every single day. That does not mean I get up and I like put on dresses and heels, but I get dressed. I take a shower, I do my hair, I get dressed every single day. And that to me is this form of glamour magic that helps to amplify how you want to feel. I also set my home space up so that I don't look around my house and feel like, oh, I hate everything about this. I hate the way my body feels. Everything feels hard. Looking at my body and my home as these sacred places. So making them these living altars, if you will, for how I want to feel. I want to feel all right. What do I need to do to look in the mirror, to look around my living room and feel all right? And then using that as support to amplify the energy that I want to feel within me. And doing that, really focusing on though just that alone helps majorly when I feel like I want to collapse from the inside out because of the way I feel inside. So using this perspective of my body and my home are these living sacred spaces, and what can I do to amplify that for myself? And for me, getting up, putting on some lipstick, and just dressing the way I want to feel is such a huge help. Now, it doesn't mean it lasts every day. I was having I get real bad back pain because of the endometriosis in my lower back. And I had on some jeans and I was like, this is not working. So I had to put on pants with stretchy band, and that's okay. And I still put on pants with stretchy bands that made me feel good, right? Really made me feel good. So I gave you these 3 examples today of energy shifts I've made in my life using the tools you have at your disposal. And this is modeling. This isn't to say that these are the exact experiences you're having and exactly what you should do, but how you can start and where you can take learning about a tool and just saying, oh, great, now I know about the 7 chakras, but using them in your life. And like my example with tarot, you learn tarot, but how do you use it to shift something in your life? And these are 3 examples from my real life that I have utilized to make these shifts. And I do this work every single day whenever anything feels like really resistant to me. I start to go back to my toolbox and where is the resistance? What am I not seeing about it? How can I shift it? How is really being in the resistance, for lack of a better way to say that? I'm trying to think of a more concrete way of saying that, but allowing the resistance to have power over my circumstance. How is that keeping me feeling bad in some way? And it doesn't mean feeling bad is wrong. That's where when we feel bad, that's how we know that there's resistance and there's friction. And that's how we start to see, oh, well, do I want to keep feeling this way? Probably not. How do I change it? And that way, feeling bad is quite the gift to understand oh, wow, there's a lot of friction there. Whew, how do I switch that? But it's very easy to just be in the resistance and think, well, this is just the way it is for me. So I'm just gonna live in the friction and tolerate it. And though we can use these tools to shift up and out in our energy. All right, I was kind of peeking the comments as they came through. And I didn't see any real questions, I don't think. Here, let's see. Pam was asking, so my master's is in education. And I specifically worked with kids and adults with learning differences. So my area of expertise there is really around executive function and how we organize our brains to organize our lives and information we receive and how we learn or don't learn, all that good stuff. Chrissy said that's what the telling people what to do. Yeah, in CPR training. That makes a lot of sense. You have to give specific instruction. Janie is saying, still can't ask for help. Yes. Asking for help and delegating assertively. Those are skills that I don't think, in my experience, no one taught me how to delegate assertively. Certainly nobody told me that. And it was not modeled for me growing up. So that is something that I had to learn and work on. Um, let's see here. Um, just checking. I had Kathy, let yourself have it. Yeah, ask for something, let yourself have it. Mm-hmm. Let's in through. Uh, yeah. Oh, Kathy's sharing about the anemia. Yeah. Yes, Kathy, I feel that the my body does not hold iron at all, it turns out. So just gotta keep taking it. It's just okay. It's just part of life now, right? Checking through here. Oh, Stacy's got the endometriosis and adenomyosis. Yeah, it's not fun. Many women have it. I have found. Oh, and Pam diagnosed with Lyme disease last summer. Yes, I live in Connecticut. I think my husband and I have had it a few times. Lyme disease. If you don't catch it though, that's a real bugger on the brain. That'll change the way you think and function 100%. All right, let's see here. Any other? Oh, Teresa puts on her red lipstick. Yes. All right. I don't see any. Oh, questions. Okay, so Michelle asked asking the questions, why me, but nothing seems to come up to help work through the shadow. Then what? So Michelle, if you ask why, so with shadow work, if you're doing shadow work, you got to ask often several questions to get to the point of it. So some other questions you could ask would be, if you're asking why me, you could ask it in other ways, like why am I mad that it's me? Like, what makes me think that I don't deserve this? Or what makes me think that it's a hardship that I deserve this? So if you got stuck on asking one question with shadow work, you could ask different questions. So we teach it actually, do I have the book? I do. I gotta try to find it. One of the things that we teach in Holistic Witchery, this is the class for it. Let me see if I can find it real fast so I don't take all your time up. We have a whole unit on shadow work, and we do this activity. I gotta blow my nose in a minute. We do this activity where we actually do this web of you, and it's where we can put different experiences that you have and then branch out from it to try to help better understand your shadow self. So without teaching that whole lesson, one of the things you could do is think back to when you were in school days, like all those years ago, before computers, middle school, writing a web to organize your ideas, and put the thing in the middle, and then start branching off the relevant ideas, the themes, and see if that doesn't help you organize the information a little bit more. All right, let's see here. Mika is asking, how do you work through a restriction, like being on disability with conditions I'll have the rest of my life? It also never increases income, really. Feel so stuck because you can't really make money or lose benefits, and you can't afford programs to help you grow. Well, Mika, I would say when it comes to something like an income restriction, let me see, how do I want to say this? I will say that I don't know your unique circumstance. So I don't know that I can speak specifically to you on this, but I do hear from a lot of women who have a fixed income, and I have women in my family who are on disability or some kind of fixed income situation where they don't want to make more money because then they lose their benefits. And I will say, as a person who has been faced with making less money so I could receive benefits, like when I was having children, or I found for me, it was always better to make more money and not have benefits. And for my personal experience, again, I'm not you. I don't have your condition that doesn't allow you to work. So I will say though, that does paint the lens through which I receive that barrier. And I would say that if you want to keep life as it is in that way, then the question becomes, what are your restrictions? What is making you feel like now it's a restriction? Because it is very much a decision, which is a fair decision given your life circumstance. Again, I am not trying to apply what is right for your life circumstance. But if it is the best decision to stay, like this is my best decision for me, then it becomes, how do I reframe the way I think about my decision so it doesn't feel like I've put myself into a restriction? And then that's the question to ask. So I've got two parts to that. One, for a person who's like really like, no, I want to change this. That is different than, no, I'm comfortable with the choice that I've made, and maybe even feel like you've been forced. You might even feel like, I've been forced to make this change. Like, I've been forced to make this decision. I don't feel like I'm comfortable with it. But if it's the one that you're going to stick with, then it's changing the thought on the circumstance. I can share an example for me in marriage. I have very much in the past struggled with marriage, and it came to a point where I really had to say, all right, if I'm going to make this work, I have to change the way I think about this. I have to acknowledge this is a decision I'm making to stay in this relationship, which therefore requires me to think about it differently to be happy. And so that would be my invitation, would be to, how do we change it from, this is a restriction because of what I'm choosing to be happy, to, like, how else can we think about it? And then it's changing the thoughts to expand in the life that you have. So for me, I want to expand in the marriage that I have, and that required shifting my thoughts about it. That was a long, rambly sentence, trying to honor where you are and also present different ways of thinking about it for other people who might be watching that might need that other perspective too. So I hope that made sense and was also compassionate, and yet I am known for a firm, I'm one of those tough love, firm kick people. So I'm known for that here. And I hope it was both compassionate and gave that to somebody who needed it today. All right, there we go. Let's see here. Just checking and see if there's any other questions I can answer. Larissa, I don't understand what shadow work is specifically. A shadow work is taking the stories from the past that are impacting your future and shifting them so you can create a different future. So for example, well, one of the examples I gave today was about like childhood stuff in my life, right? So I very much did not grow up. I mean, my mom was, I can't thank her enough for always trusting me. But she was very much like the friend, not the mom. And so I have a lot of childhood stuff around being poor. We were below federal income level when I was a senior in high school. I mean, like, it was tough. And so growing into adulthood, those are past stories that could inform what's possible for me. Like when I see opportunity, those past stories might make me think, well, that's not for me. That's not an option for me. Or with my health, I might think like, that's not an option for me because that's too challenging. It's too hard. Well, those are past stories that are impacting my decisions right now. The decisions I make right now cast the future. So shadow work is this place and presence where you are right now, looking at what are you telling yourself based on past experience that's casting your future. And is the future you're about to cast the future you want to have? And that's where you do shadow work to understand where it's coming from. Now there's more to it than that. If you want to like dive into it, but that's what do I even do there? Dive into it. But that's the essence of shadow work, is your shadow stuff. Your shadow is also how you react when you feel defensive, when you feel jealous, guilt, anger, resentment, any of those sort of negative emotions. Your shadow will come up. So like a great example right now, I love to use my marriage as an example. My husband probably hates this. I know he hates this. We have COVID going through our house. My husband has been in bed. I had to get him up actually to tend to the children. We have 2 kids, ages 6 and 9, and I homeschool and I run the Sisters Enchanted and I care for my grandparents, and my grandfather has dementia. So I have a lot happening in my life, and my husband's been in bed for 3 days sick while my kids were sick. And I just like, I'm doing the thing. And so that can start to build in me these feelings again of resentment and like Sarah crying on the kitchen floor. And so that's where shadow work comes up, when I start to feel the bubbling, like, I'm so mad. Why is this happening? And I can see, well, that's happening because in the past, I didn't ask for what I needed. In the past, my husband did not raise his hand to help when I was drowning. And this is different. This is not the past. This is the present, where my husband does help when I'm drowning, where I do delegate and ask assertively for what I need, and he's sick. And so what can happen is these past experiences can bubble into the present when they really have nothing to do with the present, but it's like you start to feel the emotion, and then the emotion like unlocks all the stories and the doors that happened before. And the shadow work is understanding this is not then. And if I'm mad and resentful now, that's going to make me mad at him. And that's going to make our tomorrow not good. And that's going to make the rest of our today not good. And that's not the future that I want. So that's like an example of shadow work that I did just this very morning in my life. All right, let's see here. A question Danielle's asking, delegating, how does someone deal with family not honoring those needs? Don't know if I asked that right. Yeah. Danielle, I think that it takes time. So one of the things I say when I teach boundaries, and I teach in magical self-care, if any of you are in there, I say this, that when you first set a boundary or start to delegate and you've not done it, people won't. Typically, this is broad strokes statement. This is a typical, just broad strokes. Folks will give you pushback, won't respect it, won't listen, and they don't do it. They're not doing it to be mean. It's like if you've never eaten broccoli your whole life and suddenly you're trying to eat broccoli and you're like, how do people eat this? But if you eat it every day for a month, suddenly you're like, broccoli's so good. You can make it crispy and put garlic on it. And who doesn't love broccoli? But if you've never done it, you don't want to do it. And it's the same. The people in your life who aren't used to you delegating, being assertive, holding your boundaries, it's not surprising if they don't put pushback. I will say in my life, with my marriage in particular, that was about a 2-year journey that was, and it's still not perfect. I've known my husband for 21 years. And so it, was 2 years of really like, this is the shift I'm making. You shift with me or you ship out. Was sort of how that came down to. And it's an ongoing journey because you don't just unravel all those years of knowing someone. And you've known yourself your whole life also. So you don't unravel all the years of knowing yourself as you were either to being the person that you will be. That doesn't happen overnight. That takes time. I think we disregard that fact with our relationships with ourselves. If you have been a person for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and suddenly you're like, wait a second, there's more. I want to feel connected to these trees in the universe. And I want to know what it means when someone talks about like where their Pluto placement is because of Pluto going into Aquarius for the next cycle. And I want to look at tarot and tell a story, and I want to do shadow work, and I want to expand and like dance with my arms out in my kitchen every day and feel free to do it. If that was not you for all those years, you have to you've got to meet yourself again for the first time and renegotiate the relationship you have with yourself, because you are different and you will treat yourself just like you treated yourself before, not how you want to treat yourself ongoing. And that's a whole unlearning in and of itself, is to know yourself in a different way. That is work. And until you are good with knowing yourself in a different way, though, and the new version of you, the other people in your life, they won't even begin to be able to know you in the way you want to be until you are comfortable knowing. So being comfortable in asserting and delegating and not having those needs met, but then saying it again and saying it again and saying it again. Being like, oh, actually, Sarah 2.0 requires this kind of marriage. Sarah 2.0 requires this kind of communication. And, trusting yourself first, and then everything else will follow. But it is a process. You don't unknow all those years overnight, unfortunately. All right. So there you go. If you have Heal Like a Witch, or if you're in holistic witchery, then you have some tools to help you with this. And those of y'all in holistic witchery, get your patooties over there and get in the materials and let us help you through this. Heal Like a Witch, go listen to it, put it in your mind, get it in there. We're going to wrap up in this next 5 minutes. I like to start with this on Sundays, but we're going to end with it today. I like to invite everybody to think about the week ahead. I mentioned somewhere in here about my expertise in education was helping people with executive function differences. And that means how people organize themselves. And so specifically things like people have ADHD, processing disorders, um, uh, sensory processing stuff, social skills things, all of that stuff that just makes our brains think different. But in women, if you are in the perimenopause or menopause years, your brain actually does a lot of the same things. It does many of the same things with organization and whatnot. So I invite you to think for a moment about your week ahead. I have my lovely TSE planner. I just finished my little vision board for the year ahead yesterday. I just finished it right before in this liminal space between Imaka and Ostara. You want to see it? I'll hold it up. I love it. Anyway, whatever it is that you plan with, I actually don't use my planner as a daily planner. I use it more as like notes and an energy casting for how I want to feel for the week ahead. And then I rely heavily on Google Calendar to run my entire life. If I didn't have Google Calendar, I would not be here right now. Maybe not that extreme, but I really do. Google Calendar is my best friend. That's my real husband is Google Calendar. So think about for the week ahead. Here's how I suggest you plan out. I love to invite you to think of your planning as a vision casting, not as a boring task that you have to do and that never works for you. I promise you that some of you all just thought to yourself, planning doesn't work for me. And I'm not trying to make it work for you. I'm trying to tell you to think about for your week ahead what you put down on your to-do list or a version of a calendar, whatever it is for you. That is your vision that you're setting for the week. It's the energy you're casting. Do you know what energy you're casting, or do you have no idea and you're winging it day by day by day? If you're winging it, it would make sense to me that you feel a little chaotic and frustrated. So you want to put on your calendar, whatever version you use, anything that's set in stone, appointments, times, work, obligations. It has a time commitment. You got to do it. That goes on there first. The next thing that I want you to do is look at all that white space and think about what you're filling it with. I am not a proponent of scheduling every hour of your day. That's not what I'm asking you to do. But if you have a lot of white space, but you find that you're not doing the things in life that you love, well, what could we put in that white space? If you don't have any white space after all your obligations, what can you start to work toward removing? And that might not happen overnight either because of obligations. But if you've got no space to breathe at all, what do you start to remove? So take a look at your week ahead. Everything with a time commitment goes on there first. If you are a person who has brain fog and can't remember anything and you procrastinate, I highly recommend Google Calendar. It is free. Turn on the push notifications. Google will be your BFF that makes sure that you're where you need to be when you need to be there. So Renee is sharing, I have too much white space. So if you have a lot of white space, start to think about what do you want to bring to your life to provide structure and get the things done that you want to get done. The last part of this that I'll mention really quickly, you can watch last week's replay where I talk about this more just for time's sake today, would be the energy component. So one of the uphill battles for people is that they have a life that doesn't align with their daily energetic output. So for example, if you have a lot of energy in the morning, but you work like 8 to 5, then that makes sense that you don't have any energy when you come home to do the things that you want to do. So short of changing your job, which I would say is not out of the realm of possibility, it would feel scary for a lot of people. But don't discount things because they feel scary. Sit with it for a minute. You can also think about then how do you realign your expectations for yourself during those hours. So if you have no energy at night, but you think you're going to come home and pay the bills and do the laundry and make a home cooked meal and exercise, and you have no energy to do it because your energy is just not there, that's not realistic. And then we want to shift your expectations for yourself to line up your life in a way that matches your energy also. All right. So look at that. Think about your planning as like a vision board for your week ahead, as opposed to this boring thing that you just have to do. Use Google Calendar. If you don't, get in there. Yeah, one of the things, those of you who are in holistic witchery, if you not, I was just going through it myself yesterday. So I see like a bunch of you about astrology and moon phases in the is it in the moon section? There's the moon centers videos from Valinda in there, and they're Kundalini yoga, which is different if you've never done it before. Definitely different. But I was looking at them and how your energy shifts in the 11 moon centers every few days, kind of like the moon moving through the signs, but a little bit different. And I was looking at it and was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense for the energy that I'm in today. So if you haven't looked at that in a while, go look at it. Go check it out. And just as a, throwing out there for those of you that I see mentioning that, because I had like some good ahas looking at the chart and just sort of scanning through the video yesterday as I was looking at it. Anyway. All right. Well, I am off. Go check on the fam bam. Make sure everyone's still hanging in there. And thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. This replay will be up shortly, and I will see you all around the interwebs. Have a great day. Bye.